Welcome back to the C Block, or final section of this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast news. I'm Elena Pinto. Despite the challenges of 23 other adult use legal states, California remains king of the cannabis revenue market. Other states like Michigan may sell more types of cannabis based products, but California revenue is twice as much as that state. Of course, rankings are easier to track when tied to tax revenue, and California collects more than twice as much as Michigan, Washington State, and Illinois. And now, with another tax hike lurking to go into effect on July 1st in that state, some MSOs are getting out of the California market, which has collected over $6 billion in tax revenue since its inception in 2018. You have to wonder how long that state can maintain its top spot with margins thin and getting thinner with an increase in taxes again. With that in mind, we now have two correspondents who are involved with the cannabis industry in California. Here's Dina Naguib in the south and Yarrow Kubrin in the north.
I'm Dina Naguib, Principal Consultant at Grass Goddess Consulting, here to give you the latest developments in California for cannabis coast to coast news. To kick us off, some good news out of Sacramento regarding AB 564, sponsored by Matt Haney, which passed another committee last week. The Revenue and Taxation Committee voted 6-0 to advance the bill, which blocks the excise tax increase from 15 to 19%. Amy Jenkins, Executive Director of the California Cannabis Operators Association, and Kristen Heidelbeck, Legislative Director of the United Food and Commercial Workers, testified in support of the bill along with a number of industry workers and advocates. Next up is the Appropriations Committee set to meet this week, so stay tuned. In other news, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, announced this week that the state has essentially eradicated hemp-derived THC products since the ban he instituted last year. Newsom stated that 99.7% of the businesses visited were in compliance with his ban. The cannabis industry responded with a variety of reactions, from thinking the announcement was comical to some more colorful comments about Newsom. The general consensus is that hemp-derived THC products are still rampant in California, just maybe not where the state was looking. In addition, the ban can only be extended for one more 90-day period, and it is unclear what will happen when that time is up. That's it for California. I'm Dina Naguib with Grass Goddess Consulting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Yarrow Kubrin here, Pro Cannabis Media, reporting on Northern California Week in Review. The California State Fair just wrapped up the submission window for cannabis entrance into the state fair. This is the first state fair in the history of the country to have cannabis awards. The state fair will be kicking off in the middle of July, a 17-day extravaganza culminating in an award show for those cannabis entrants. If the Emerald Cup was the Oscar of cannabis awards, the California State Fair is Cannes. Looking forward to that. Last week, Sonoma Hills Farms, in association with Buddhist and Christina W., had the Pink Jesus Ice Cream Social. For those of you that don't know, Pink Jesus is a proprietary cultivar grown on Sonoma Hills Farms' West Petaluma estate. Don't worry, the strain is non-denominational. Lastly, we've got the shrinking ice caps with polar bears still trying to survive, and those cannabis operators are looking at a pending 26% increase to their state taxes, from a whopping 15% to a lopping 19%. That was baked into the laws in 2022, thanks to Gavin Newsom. And yet, at the 11th hour, the cavalry coming over the hill, the Assembly Revenue and Taxation Committee just voted 6-0 to advance Bill 564, which would stop the excise tax from going up. Remember, that does not reduce the draconian taxes. It just stops them from going up further. Let's not forget, this country was based on tax revolt. We threw tea into the Boston Harbor. Let's hope we don't waste any cannabis throwing it into the Pacific Ocean.
Illinois continues to grow their revenue and subsequent tax dollars, but that state has other challenges. Mark Allen tells us that now cannabis businesses and politicians are working together in that state to curb licensing fees and taxes.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mark Allen, the Chicago Clone Guy, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News, just outside of Chicago, Illinois. And this is Bird waving at you right now. Perfect timing. Lots always going on here in Illinois. First thing going on is that there's a bunch of cannabis business owners, craft growers, hemp growers that are teaming up with Representative Ford to pretty much get relief from burdensome and costly regulations. Specifically, they want reduced fees for licensing, reduced fees and taxes on products, reduce regulation in general. They want medical patients to be able to go to more than just one medical dispensary, to be able to go anywhere, open it up. So they're teaming up to make a lot of common sense decisions. Another thing interesting going on here in the state is that I found out that all the commercial craft growers that grow cannabis in the state have to conform to certain standards for their product. And one of those standards or tests is for pesticides. And I found out that zero, allegedly, craft growers or growers are capable of passing this test because the state accidentally made it impossible to pass. Literally, there was discrepancy. There was an accident. It was supposed to be a certain number that they had to meet or pass, but the state accidentally added a zero to that number. So that accidental oops would make it literally impossible to pass this test. And also, if it's not only impossible to pass, but the people that actually perform the test said for them to actually perform the test on the product, which would have to be done every 2 months, would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to conform to that. So right now, the state is really quiet about this, and nobody really knows, but, I think they need to go into that paperwork and that rule and delete a zero. Take a zero off, and then and then say you're sorry or just shut up and move on. But anyways, that's the Chicago way. I'm Mark Allen, the Chicago Clone Guy, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is Bird waving again, checking out. Thanks for tuning in.
In Oklahoma, there will be a major change in the cannabis laws regarding the labeling and packaging of cannabis products starting June 1st. It's called pre-packaging, and Kimmy Cannabis explains what that's all about.
I am Kimmy Cannabis from Can I Talk About It with the Oklahoma Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Beginning June 1st, Oklahoma's cannabis rules are changing once again. Under the new regulation, all cannabis flower must be pre-packaged before reaching dispensary shelves, with package sizes ranging between half a gram and 3 ounces. Cannabis purchased before June 1st can still be sold deli style, but once that inventory is gone, it's strictly pre-packaged from that point forward. So what does that compliant packaging look like? The law does permit non-opaque materials for medical cannabis flower as long as the package meets all other packaging requirements. And when it comes to packaging appeal, labels, packages, and containers must not attract children, meaning no toys, no cartoons, and no childlike imagery. Packaging should clearly display only the producer's name, logo, and an image of the product. Nothing more. For many growers, especially those who primarily dealt in bulk flower, this may be their first time navigating strict packaging compliance. And it does come with a cost. Ashley Nicole, compliance agent and sales rep for Grassfire Grow Co., explains. In an already bottom of the barrel market, this is going to put a lot of more grows out of business. They'll lose more money on packaging and labor. And if a grow uses a processor to pre-package their flower, it can't come back to the grow to be sold. That means cultivators now need a licensed distributor or processor just to get products to dispensaries, who can afford to wait weeks to receive their money. That's it for the Oklahoma update. Peace, love, and all that good stuff.
Price compression continues in legal states all over the country. Perhaps the most glaring example is Michigan, where in 2019, a price for an ounce was $516. Now it's $65. Certainly good for consumers, but the market glut of product is a perfect example of supply and demand. One of the basic lessons in economics. Our Michigan reporter, Amy Carter, has an update on the Michigan cannabis market.
I'm Amy Carter with Michigan Weedsters, and it's time for this week's Michigan Report from Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Things are firing up in Michigan's cannabis scene, but not exactly for the right reasons. On April 24th, a bill was introduced that could allow law enforcement to conduct roadside swab tests for drug impairment. Buckle up, and here's what's brewing. A Kalamazoo company is claiming its shiny new testing method can sniff out impairment from a whole melody of substances. Think cannabis, opiates, cocaine, fentanyl, meth, prescription drugs, and more. It seems they can test for just about anything under the sun. If this proposal becomes law, Michigan would join the ranks to be the 25th state to embrace roadside saliva tests. Out of the previous 24, only Alabama and Indiana have permanent or active roadside screening programs for detecting substances in drivers. Minnesota is dipping its toes in the idea with a pilot program, but hasn't fully committed yet. With that being said, mark your calendars. Michigan Weedsters is hosting a lobby day on May 20th at 9 a.m. at the Anderson Building. Come join us to let your voice be heard. In other news, Indiana has rolled out a new law that puts the kibosh on cannabis advertising statewide. This includes billboards, mailers, digital ads, and even those mobile trucks zipping around. This is a bummer for Michigan dispensaries that have been counting on such ads to reel Indiana customers in. Now let's talk prices. Michigan's cannabis costs have taken a nosedive from a whopping $512 an ounce in 2019 to just around $65 today. Well, this sounds like a win for our wallets. It also means the market is getting a bit crowded with mediocre products, and that is for sure. And here is a juicy tidbit. Michigan regulators might soon gain the power to keep a close eye on cannabis businesses and their customers whenever they please. This could become a reality if one of the numerous proposed rule changes from the Cannabis Regulatory Agency gets the green light. Right now, businesses are required to record various operations, sales, processing, shipping, and keep it at least 30 days worth of footage on hand to share with the CRA investigators whenever they ask. But 24-hour active surveillance on customers and staff? Talk about keeping things on the lockdown. So, as I said, things are heating up here, and after sharing this week's news, I think I'm ready to go smoke. I'm Amy Carter with Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
We have a new correspondent we want to welcome from our native Massachusetts state. His name is Curtis Emery, and not only is he passionate about the cause, he's also a bud tender at Resonate, a Worcester dispensary. Here's Curtis's first report.
I'm Curtis Emery, a Massachusetts bud tender with the Bay State Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Massachusetts legislators are seeking to reevaluate existing laws. This week, hemp-derived products available outside of the dispensary environment. There are currently 4 bills this session which aim to empower local and state government to regulate the widely available products. The goal of such work? Keep hemp-derived products out of the hands of underage users and add some accountability to the statewide market. Calling all artists, the 36th annual Boston Freedom Rally is looking for their new official flyer. The organization is soliciting submissions from artists across the state wishing to take part. The Boston Freedom Rally will take place this year, September 19th and September 20th at the Boston Commons. Artists have until June 1st to submit their designs for the official flyer. There will be 2 votes, a People's Choice Award, which will choose their favorite design on social media, and a Director's Choice, which will be voted on by a panel of judges from the Boston Freedom Rally itself. It seems like it'll be a great year to get involved. This has been Curtis Emery with the Bay State Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
And finally tonight, the celeb stoner Steve Bloom from New York shared a eulogy of sorts for the New York Cannabis Parade that was canceled for the first time in 53 years. There was a slim hope that a change in the parade route might have given the annual celebration of the plant medicine a second life. But this week, Steve explained in his weekly newsletter that the parade has been canceled. This is just another example of what happens when states legalize adult use of cannabis. The events that were held in protest of the draconian laws that created prohibition of cannabis end up going by the wayside. New York has a resilient group of businesses, and the culture is very strong in the Big Apple alone. And you have to think that this annual event will return sometime in the future. That's the hope anyway. And that's a wrap on this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Elena Pinto. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Consume it responsibly, and I'll see you again in June. PCM TV founder Jimmy Young anchors next week.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Welcome to Pro Cannabis Media, your go-to for all things cannabis. PCM is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news and talk shows with a twist. We've got 16 state correspondents and multimedia journalists from around the US and Canada.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Big Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report.
I'm Amy Carter from Michigan Weedsters.
Andrew Behringer here reporting from Washington, D.C.
Debbie Fazy with the Canadian Toke of the Week.
It all started back in 2018 when founder Jimmy Young kicked off the In the Weeds podcast. His mission? Documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition. Fast forward to today and we've got Cannabis Coast to Coast with Elena Pinto, delivering the nation's only TV-style cannabis news show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast, PCM TV's weekly roundup of industry news from California to New York. I'm Elena Pinto.
As of August 2024, PCM has racked up over 1.2 million views and 14.5 million impressions on our YouTube channel. With 15,000 subscribers and growing, our reach is spreading like wildfire. PCM's website, YouTube, Rumble, Discord, Roku, Twitch, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and even our very own PCM TV app. Get your cannabis news fix with Pro Cannabis Media. We're here to keep you informed and entertained. Stay tuned and stay lifted.